From a troubled upbringing to a controversy at the Oscars, America's dad has been through some serious difficulties in his life. These are the heartbreaking details about Tom Hanks. As a kid, Tom Hanks was not a stranger to divorces and failed relationships. After all, his parents had 7 between them. Hanks himself was 5 years old when his parents divorced. They both went on to remarry several times. His dad remarried 3 times before he found his true match, and his mother remarried 4 times before she found hers. In an emotional interview with BBC4's Desert Island Discs, Hanks lamented the lack of communication between his parents and his siblings to reassure them that they were not at fault. What's more, Hanks was constantly on the move as a child, living in 10 different houses in 5 years. Unsurprisingly, Tom Hanks wanted the kind of stability he didn't have as a child. As an adult, he now had the means to establish it, and so he married young. He was 23 years old when he tied the knot with college sweetheart and actress Samantha Luz. At the time, Tom's firstborn son, Colin, was 2 years old. In an interview with The Express, Hanks recalled his first marriage with some regret since he now knows he wasn't ready. He and Luz met at Sacramento State University as acting students. When they later separated, he was aware that he was placing his 2 children in the same situation he once was in as a kid. Hanks' first marriage had no chance of surviving when he met Rita Wilson in the midst of it. When he first lay eyes on Wilson, he was smitten. They officially met on the set of Bosom Buddies in 1981, and then they worked together again on Volunteers in 1984. It was that second collaboration that became the point of no return. The two began dating publicly in 1986, and Hanks' divorce from Luz was finalized in 1987. Although Tom Hanks divorced Samantha Luz in 1987, she was still the mother of 2 of his children. So, the news of her bone cancer diagnosis in 2001 must have been devastating. He learned of it during Oscar season, when he was nominated for Best Actor for Castaway, per the New York Post. Luz died in 2002. The people who felt her loss the most were likely her children. Colin Hanks spent most of his time with his mother growing up, only seeing his dad every other weekend and during summer vacation. The differences between the 2 homes were drastic. In an interview with the podcast The Armchair Expert, Colin said he wasn't sure how much his mother was getting in alimony, but he would often hear her say that they didn't have the amount of money Tom did. Colin also said his father's wealth was limited until he starred in Forrest Gump, which occurred when Colin was already 17 years old. As one of America's most successful stars, you'd assume that Tom Hanks must have had an easy transition to the director's chair. In fact, for his directorial debut, That Thing You Do, he received help from the great Nora Ephron, who advised him to trim down his characters and his scenes. Hanks' movie about a one-hit wonder band set in the 1960s was inspired by the story of Jimmy Nichols' last-minute replacement of Ringo Starr during a Beatles tour. He began fiddling with the story while filming Forrest Gump and began developing it after wrapping up Apollo 13. But when the film hit theaters, it landed with a dud. It earned only $25 million in the United States and $8.7 million internationally. In an interview with The Ringer, Hanks said he was dismayed by its outcome. But the movie was liked by critics and it found a second life thanks to cable airings and a home video release. That Thing You Do eventually became a classic among a younger generation who saw it on DVD. Stars of the film still get recognized on the streets by fans, and Tom Everett Scott, who played drummer Guy Patterson, was given a cameo in La La Land thanks to his role. The director, Damien Chazelle, considered himself the movie's biggest fan. Audiences may not have initially shown up for That Thing You Do, but film critics definitely did. But for Tom Hanks' second directorial feat, he received love from neither. The film in question, Larry Crowne, is about a likable guy who's fired from his retail job because he doesn't have a college education. He starts taking classes at a community college and eventually falls in love with one of his professors. Audiences weren't enamored by the film, and it received a Rotten Tomatoes audience score of 41%. Critics were even more harsh. The Wall Street Journal called it a distinctly painful experience. The Los Angeles Times found the movie especially disappointing considering that another typical box office draw, Julia Roberts, co-starred with Hanks. Roger Ebert said Larry Crowne had no reason for existing. As harsh as it was, perhaps Hanks should have considered himself lucky that Ebert wasn't as harsh as he could be.
Completely, this movie is a total disappointment. No thought went into it, no effort went into it.
In 2015, Tom Hanks' wife, Rita Wilson, announced that she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent a double mastectomy and reconstructive surgery and took leave from the Broadway play Fish in the Dark. Wilson had a full recovery, which she credited to an early detection. In a statement to People magazine, Wilson advocated for second opinions and stressed the importance of an early diagnosis. She noted that Hanks, along with other friends and family, was supportive and was by her side during her recovery. By 2020, she had been cancer-free for 5 years. In an interview with Healthline, Wilson said she came to peace with her double mastectomy and is grateful for reconstruction. In 2013, Tom Hanks announced on The Late Show with David Letterman that he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. After battling with high blood sugar since he was 36 years old, his doctor told him he had, quote, graduated into diabetes. Tom Hanks said it was manageable through diet, and his doctor even told him he could reverse his condition if he lost weight and reached the same weight he had in high school. Any chance of that?
What did you weigh in high school?
I weighed 96 pounds in high school. And
Hanks believes that losing and gaining weight for roles might have led to his diagnosis, but he believes he was also genetically inclined to get it. He also blames the lifestyle and eating habits he's kept since he was a kid. In a very public news cycle, Tom Hanks and wife Rita Wilson were among the first celebrities to become publicly infected with COVID-19. He announced the news on March 11, 2020 on his Instagram, informing his followers of the protocol they adhered to. His listed symptoms included body aches, exhaustion, and a fever. They caught COVID-19 while Hanks was working on Baz Luhrmann's Elvis in Australia. A few days later, production on the film was postponed. Hanks and Wilson weren't sure how they got infected, but doctors assume both received it from the same persons. Hanks said that since social distancing hadn't caught on yet, he had been shaking hands and hugging numerous people. Their symptoms were so severe that they could have been hospitalized, but they weren't aware of how worrisome the news seemed to the rest of the world. Hanks and Wilson have said that they were mostly offline while trying to get better. On Twitter, Hanks said that he and his wife felt better after 2 weeks and were soon spotted back in Los Angeles. Whereas Tom Hanks' wholesome, nice guy persona has earned him the title of America's Dad, his son Chet Hanks' image hasn't been so clean. Chet's been involved in a few controversies, including an Instagram post denouncing the COVID-19 vaccine. But his troubled life goes beyond social media comments and into the realm of substance abuse. In 2015, Chet released a series of videos on Instagram explaining his whereabouts after an absence online. He had undergone treatment at a rehab center, revealing that he previously sold and used cocaine. But he since found himself in a better place and opened up on the lifelong pressures he struggled with. Seeing a child struggle with addiction and drug abuse is harrowing for any parent, and it's no different for Tom Hanks. Tom praised his son for his openness and honesty and said that he loves his children unconditionally. Chet said becoming a father forced him to recover, and he credited his own parents' support during the process. We all know Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, and Saving Private Ryan, but have you heard of The Bonfire of the Vanities and A Hologram for the King? Although Tom Hanks has starred in various hits that have likely been preserved and sanctified by the Library of Congress, he's had his share of misfires. The Bonfire of the Vanities is one of Hanks' most notorious failures, making only $15 million against a $47 million budget. Its failures were even detailed in a best-selling book called The Devil's Candy. Another bomb, Cloud Atlas, seemed sure to be a hit, considering that the filmmakers behind The Matrix were helming it. But it only garnered $130 million worldwide, with only $27 million of that being domestic against a whopping $150 million budget. Hanks has said that he's experienced periods of despondency as a result of failed features. Filming Cloud Atlas was life-changing for him, and it was the only film of his he's seen more than once, so he had high hopes. But failure comes with the territory. He believes that 80% of an actor's films end up being financial failures. But Hanks, whose net worth is an estimated $400 million, can afford to make a couple duds here and there, so it's not all doom and gloom.
As tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Even as successful as Tom Hanks is, he doesn't put himself or his work on a pedestal. His highest-earning franchise is no exception. The Da Vinci Code series was mightily successful at the box office. Its first installment garnered $760 million in revenue worldwide, making it Hanks' most financially successful film. In an interview with the New York Times, he defended himself against accusations of cynicism, which argued that he only acted in its sequels for money. Although he called the series a commercial enterprise, he believed the series sought to entertain people with pure motives. However, he also called the movies hooey, comparing their accuracy to the espionage and James Bond movies. By the end of the franchise, Hanks believed it was no longer, quote, good commerce. In 2002, Hanks said that he didn't believe any of his movies were underrated, and all received at least their deserved praise. In an interview with The Guardian, Hanks admitted that he's made movies that didn't make a lot of sense, but they all required effort. Even then, he doesn't like to think about his past roles because they remind him of individual acting decisions he regrets making. When Forrest Gump won Best Picture at the 1995 Oscars, it was immediately controversial. Not because it didn't deserve the win on its own terms. In fact, the movie presented an impressive feat of digital filmmaking that allowed Forrest to interact with dead figures in old footage. Rather, it was controversial because it won over Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino's cult film set in motion a wave of indie filmmaking, and his stylistic directing and sleek dialogue was perceived as a breath of fresh air for cinema. Since then, people are quick to crown Pulp Fiction as the true winner and Forrest Gump, despite its cultural weight, as the upset.
And
nothing. That's it.
But Tom Hanks wants none of it. Although he admits that Forrest Gump relied on baby boomer nostalgia and calls Pulp Fiction a masterpiece, he believes that his movie has an undeniable heartbreaking humanity that makes it worthy of its Oscar. In an interview with the New York Times, Hanks said he believes the movie's immediate financial success dampened its legacy since it's never on any lists for the best movies of all time. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite movie stars are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.